your sales fell short of expectations, but your shares, frankly, were slammed, down almost 7%. Were you surprised with how big the market reaction was?
Yeah, thanks, Francine, for having me this morning. So I'll not comment on the share price development because that's in the eye of the beholder to do that. But I would say that when you look at our guidance for this year, we're actually upgrading guidance. We're adding 2 percentage points on the top line. And when you correct for a write-down and asset impairment on our operating profit, we're actually increasing operating profit guidance by 4%. So I think very robust guidance. But the second quarter is a quarter where Wegovy came in a bit short of consensus, and that's linked partly to some adjustments in how we accrue for rebates. So we really urge investors to not just look at the quarter in isolation, but look at our confidence in the rest of the year and the upgrade we are bringing, because that's really a sign that we'll continue the trajectory we saw in first quarter in terms of achieving many more scripts in the U.S. market. We doubled the number of scripts in the U.S. market during the first 6 months. So we're confident in the outlook, but there are a few issues in the quarter to sort out.
So do you think actually what you've been hit by were one-off factors? And can you reassure the markets on that, or is it a bit too soon to say?
No, I think if you look at the development in the U.S. market, we started the year with a script count of around 100,000. We ended the first half year with doubling that, 200,000. And what we guide for is a continued, increase in that. So when you look at an individual quarter, you will have quarters where you have positive rebate adjustments, and you'll have quarters where you have negative rebate adjustments. And this quarter was one where we had a negative impact on Wegovy, and that explains, I think, a good part of the shortage compared to consensus. So I'm confident in our ability to compete, to grow with Wegovy and also Ozempic in the US, and that's what is baked into our guidance increase for both top line and operating profits.
The Eli Lilly chief executive said last week that the shortage, of course, for their weight loss drug Mounjaro would soon be over. What do you anticipate the Wegovy shortage being over?
Well, we have also overnight removed the drug shortage notification for all but the starter dose, and we chose to keep it on the starter dose because that's really how we manage, a safe journey for patients. So when they start on a Novo Nordisk product, they can rest assured they can also titrate up to the high doses. So I'm really encouraged in our ability to scale to the US market to a degree where the FDA also accepts taking off the drug shortage notification. And again, look at the scripts and how we are serving more and more patients. That's really a sign of our underlying scaling of manufacturing, and the fact that we can opt our guidance for the second half, where we have a tougher comparator from last year, is a sign of that continued scaling.
But when are you expecting the shortage for the starter doses to actually lift?
Well, we are supplying many more products, so you could say that we could also choose to remove that, but we have kept it because we think that there is a good sign of responsibility in terms of patient focus by actually in a dynamic way managing how many patients we start to make sure that all get a good experience. But we could also look at that if that's meaningful.
Just on the rebates, are you confident that they've actually hit rock bottom or have hit bottom in the U.S.?
So typically in the U.S. market, when you reach more and more patients and grow volumes, you do that on a lower price. For instance, we are broadening access in Medicaid. We have 20 states in the U.S. who now support use of Wegovy. And that typically comes at a lower price when you operate in the Medicaid segment. So when you expand your market access, you typically also give somewhat higher rebates. So that's a normal way of seeing a trajectory in the U.S. market. There's nothing special around that. And it's really the financial guidance we give that should give investors a reassurance that there is an intact growth trajectory that we find very attractive also in the coming quarters and years, I would say.
Yeah. So the price of Ozempic and Wegovy has really, taken on a political issue in the U.S., and I think you're testifying before the Senate committee next month. So how do you anticipate the outcome of the U.S. election actually changing, your life in the U.S.?
Well, I think in parallel with the focus on the price of medicines, I think we're also building the case of stronger and stronger evidence for using it. So if you look at what Ozempic and Wegovy are bringing to patients, not only glucose regulation, weight loss, cardiovascular protection, kidney safety. We're also studying MASH, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. We are looking at Alzheimer's, etc. So the body of evidence, you can say, becomes stronger and stronger, and the value of the medicine becomes stronger and stronger. And also, if you look at what is the cost to society of obesity, the estimates that makes that cost the U.S. society $1.7 trillion, around half a trillion direct link to cost in the healthcare system and also economic activity level. So this, I think, has to be factored in, but it doesn't change the fact that the U.S. has a challenged healthcare system that we all need to contribute to and make sure the patients get access to the medicines.
But, sir, who do you think will be more amenable to those arguments? Is it President Trump or Vice President Harris?
Well, I think that's too early to tell. I think all politicians in the U.S. have a keen focus on the healthcare system because that's a key point for voters for good reasons. And I welcome the opportunity to testify in the Senate to explain our side of the story. I think there's been a lot of facts out there that could use a slightly different perspective, and I'll do that in September. And then I think it's really a story about collaborating to make sure that we together across different partakers in the industry work together and solve this challenge. It's not for one company in isolation to deal with.
You have a significant price premium to the rest of the pharma sector. Can you again give us an indication on how you see this developing? Do you think it's justified, given also those drugs' potential use to ease other risks, including heart disease?
Well, I'll let the market justify the price premium on our share. But if you look at, say, average growth in our sector, and then the growth that we are showing right now, growing 25% on the top line and increasing guidance for the year, I think that's clearly industry-leading growth. And I think that's because of our exposure to some very attractive disease areas and some great innovation, and also the pipeline coming and with great promise to sustain that growth in the future. So that's what we're focused on: getting to many more patients, scaling capacity, and build the strongest possible pipeline in these disease areas.
I also want to ask you, as a final question, when you look at some of all the concerns or actually talk about injected versus the injected version versus the pill, are you pursuing the pill or injected version of your compound in later stage trials?
So we're doing both. I think we have a very attractive pipeline in terms of injectable products on the market, but also a phase 3 readout of our next generation injectable coming later this year. But we also have, a very efficacious tablet-based treatment of semaglutide that is actually doing very well commercially in type 2 diabetes right now. We also have some exciting data there in obesity. And then we have perhaps a more scalable small molecule approach in an asset we acquired from Canadian Inversago a couple of years back, where we also get some phase 2 data later this year. So I think we have a very interesting portfolio where we can play in different segments with different, perhaps, say, efficacy and scalability points. But I think it's a market where there's place for more competition, and I think what we have been doing has attracted a lot of competition, and I welcome that because this is our home turf, and I think we have the capabilities needed to stay strong in this very attractive market.